day I decided to go to rehab was like I was riding my bike around town. I go to this like I don't know, like a Mexican restaurant along the way. I like get 4 shots of tequila, give the guy my card, and it's declined. Like I don't know why I was surprised, but that really shook me. I was like, I have nothing. I'm at a crossroads. I can either go be a sex worker and try to sell drugs, or I can go to rehab.
This is Hard Knocks Talks.
What's up, Anna? How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for making all the efforts. Holy cow, what a morning it's been. We've been going back and forth with tech and all the things, and here we are.
I know. I wish I could say I learned something. I don't know that I did.
Yeah. I don't know either.
I feel that deeply with my painting stuff. I do things and then I'm like, I have no idea if I learned anything or not, but
Yeah. Donna's taken a deep passion into painting, which she's had her whole, like, since I've known her, but finally it's manifesting and it's beautiful. Welcome to the podcast, Donna, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, it's good to be back.
Yeah. So, Anna, you have a channel. Tell us a little bit about your YouTube channel.
Yeah, I started a YouTube channel. I think it was 6 months into my sobriety, and I just was like, I wasn't really working. I needed an outlet. I was like, I don't know if this is going to help people, but I love making videos and talking about recovery and just kind of like reflecting on it. So anyway, started a YouTube channel, had no idea what I was doing. And I was like, should I upload a video? Did it. And it was like the scariest thing I think I've ever done. But yeah, it's been a really interesting journey over the last 6 months since I started it. It's like I think the number one thing that I've taken away is like the community that is on YouTube. You know, you never know if it's going to be received well or who's going to be looking at your videos or engaging with you. And that's probably one of the scariest things. And it's been like an outpouring of the recovery community.
Cool. Well, there's a link in the show notes. So after this episode, feel free to go and check out Anna's channel. Give her a sub. That's how I found you. You popped up on my feed, and I started listening to your story. And you just do such an eloquent job of just being real about it, you know. And that's really what I love. I mean, this is Hard Knocks Talks, and you're really not afraid to talk about those impactful moments in your journey. So, without further ado. Why don't we get into it? I'm always interested to know where the journey starts. Now, was this something that you grew up around? Did your parents drink and use, or what did that look like?
Oh my gosh. No. The long and short of it is no. I grew up in an incredibly religious family. My parents didn't drink really growing up. When I was, in the house, we didn't have alcohol. My dad taught at a Christian college. So kind of an idyllic childhood in a small town in Oregon. I started kind of moving away from what I grew up with in high school. So yeah, I was verbally and psychologically abused by my basketball coach in high school. So I was, crazy about basketball. It was my life. By sophomore year, the abuse was like, I thought I was doing something wrong. Just like the memories that I have at that time, it was, moving towards like suicidal ideation. My parents were aware of this. They're like, something is wrong, like something is seriously wrong. And a couple of the other players had experienced this too. And so, pile on top of that, I guess, the complexity of, I can't not do this. This is a thing that I love. So my parents basically came to me with a choice. They said, we can move to a different town so you can play basketball, or you can stay here and quit and pick another sport.
That's an impossible choice for someone. Like I used to play sports a lot as well. And so right away, my heart was in my throat. Like, oh my God, that is such a huge decision to be put in.
Well, and I was sitting here looking at you and I'm like, are you okay? Like you're like scowling at the screen and I'm like, yeah, totally. You've got like this total, like you're like that. Screw that football coach.
Yeah.
Or basketball coach.
Basketball coach.
Yeah.
What a jerk.
Yeah, yeah.
She's
So
on
Donna's
my resentments list. Yeah.
yeah, Donna's mama bear's coming out full force.
Yeah, I know. I can feel it. I can feel it through the screen.
Yeah. What did your parents say? Because it sounds like was there no talk about, hey, maybe someone should talk to this coach because she's being a bit of a bitch?
Yeah, it's a great point. There was definitely some intervening that happened, and there was a lot of pushback from the school and from the coach to the point where it was like, we're at a standstill. This is like unacceptable behavior and abusive as a coach to be treating a player like this. But it was a stalemate. It was like, and it was at that point, I'll never forget, we were sitting in the living room. I have an older brother. He's 4 years older. He was in college at the time, and it was my parents and my brother and I. And they said, "You have a choice. Like, what do you want to do?" And I remember just sitting there paralyzed because it was, like I said, an impossible decision. I had like an
Hmm.
amazing foundation of a friend group, an amazing community. It was like, do I choose basketball, this thing that I'm like so in love with and passionate about, or do I choose to let that go and stay where I am and have to like watch my teammates play under this coach and not be able to participate? And the
Hmm.
family decided, we're moving. Okay, now we're investing in a house. And we moved into a town. I don't know if you'd call it a town, like a city that is incredibly affluent. Like, here, go from this little town to this really affluent town, and you'll be fine. Just like, I think I felt like I was thrown to the wolves by my own
Yeah,
family.
for sure.
So I think I was 17. I had quit. I was at the new school. I made varsity. I was playing. I eventually, that's another story, but eventually just crashed and burned. I had to quit the team. I was suicidal. It was my personal hell to have to get up and go to school and go to practice. The school I went to was, I still have trauma from the people I had to encounter there, and like the kids there are just so affluent. My own teammates didn't like me, and that was traumatizing in and of itself, to go from a team that was so close knit and that I loved and we played well together and I fit in there, to go to a team that was like, we don't we don't want you here. Why are you here? Why?
Hmm.
We're going to push you down at practice. We're going to bully you. I was a junior and they hazed me. They took us to a house on the lake. They made us wear diapers. And then with all of that on, they took us and we had to hold like a string, and like all of us lined up and like walk down the street in the town, just
Hmm.
around the town. I think there's clearly like a level of, I'm a threat, like let's put her down. Like let's put
Hmm.
her
Hmm.
down
Hmm.
and keep her down. So I think that's part of the where the suicide um contributed to those suicidal thoughts and plans. I think the other significant experience that I had was losing my virginity in a really sad way. Just, I think, and I was just like almost blacked out when it happened and just kind of discarded after that. And in my family, that like, it's like a cardinal sin to have premarital sex. So that was a traumatic experience, I think, for me too, just given the context of how I grew up.
Well, even outside of the
Um,
context of how you grew up, I mean, like that's an incredibly traumatic event.
Which is almost exactly what also happened to
Yeah,
Donna.
we have a lot of
wow.
similarities in our story,
Wow.
in around same age ranges and all the things. So,
Everything I knew in the world was just crashing down. Anything that mattered to me was gone because my family had thrown me to the wolves. I think or that's how I perceived it. And so for me, it was like, nothing matters. I don't matter. My life doesn't matter. My family, who I thought was like the best family in the world, I'm perceiving them as the opposite of that at this point. I remember driving to school, and there's this hill that it's kind of windy. And I was so, I had a plan. I was like, I'm gonna drive off this. It was, I'm gonna drive off of this, and it's gonna end up like this. I'm gonna speed up and I'm gonna drive off, and it'll all be over, and I don't have to do this anymore. Cutting was a part of my story too. It was dark. My parents pulled me off the team. They're like, "You're off the team. We're not. Your life is more important."
When did alcohol enter the picture?
I'll never forget, it was warm vodka shots. I remember just feeling a sense of relief that oh, I don't have to pretend anymore. I don't have to live this life that I cannot
Mm.
live, that is unbearable. Inadvertently soothing this pain. And and on top of that, in at that age when you're drinking and you're partying, it's instantly you fit in. I was like,
Yeah.
this is it. I was like, this is the key. This is how I live now. This is how I fit in. This is how I find a sense of belonging. So after high school, I got into a small Christian college where my dad taught. So ironically, I didn't want to leave the town I had moved into. I was like, I finally mastered how to fit in here. I finally mastered it, and now I have to move on to something else, which was this school that was incredibly uptight. And you sign a contract that's like, I won't drink, I won't smoke, I won't have sex. And if you
Wow.
do any of those things or get caught, the consequences are severe. And then partying became who I was. And that just amplified in college. And I was the girl. I was the party girl. I was like, I don't know who I am. And so if I can drink really well and I can party and it's fun and people have fun around me and they think I'm cool, then that's who I'm going to be. So that was kind of a time where I kind of had bright spots of doing well in school. I graduated, had a really healthy relationship with someone for the first time. I think that was the first time I felt valued and
Mm-hmm.
worthwhile to somebody else. I think I had been so discarded by any guy prior to that. He was so cute. He played baseball. He was like cool. And I was like, he likes me? What? And so it was this validation that is also scary. That's a really scary thing to hang your hat on. Um, because I think that's when I started to see that, oh, I can get attention from men, and that fills this void that I am feeling because of what's happened to me or whatever, like the collective life experiences up until now and the trauma. So that relationship was healthy. He treated me well. He met my family. He really did care about me, and he kind of showed me, here's what it's like to be in a long-term relationship with someone who cares about you, values you, and actually wants to be with you. Yeah, and it was interesting because during that relationship, I would get, blackout drunk when I'd go to visit friends at like U of O, and just like horrific things happen. Like I fell down a staircase outside, don't remember, woke up the next day in a chair with like a patch over my eye like this, and I had a rock in my head and was bleeding profusely. And so like these things, I would do these things intermittently while I was in a relationship with this guy who was like not really into drinking. I was like, I really want to be with this guy. I will do anything to be with him, but it was hard for me because I had to force myself not to drink in order to be with him and keep the relationship as it was and maintain it. But a lot of my self-worth was absolutely tied up in that relationship. So when it ended, another just devastation. um
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
I just went full force, hooking up with whoever I could, anyone he knew.
So this was a
That's
revenge
another
thing.
big. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I graduate, I move into Portland. I was working as like a barista. I lived in this little condo with one of my best friends to this day. Just absolute like ride or die. And we were both single, and we would just go out all the time. That's what we did. Drink, go out, get attention, hook up with someone, not know who it was, be sexually assaulted, not know I was sexually assaulted, never talk to this person again, not tell anyone about it. That's when a lot of this stuff was happening. And I figured if I was putting myself in these situations, then of course these things would happen. And
Mm.
that's just the way it is, specifically with like sexual assault stuff. I think I just wasn't even thinking. I think I
Mm.
was just acting. Like, I think that's where my head was at. It wasn't even trying to figure out where I was headed. It was
Mm-hmm.
just like survival mode with everything that had happened, and just putting one foot in front of the other and trying to self medicate. I wanted to go to law school. I wanted to be a public defender for in criminal law, and so I was studying for the LSAT. I eventually got a job as a drug court coordinator and a DUI court coordinator, mental health court coordinator for one of the neighboring counties in Portland. And so I was drinking like an alcoholic while I was providing services to alcoholics, drug addicts, and people with mental health issues. And I think that fed into the delusion that I didn't have a problem because I would interact with people that had a meth problem. And I was like, I would never do that.
Oh
I'm
my
not that
God,
bad.
gross.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You look at, you don't have teeth. What? Like I was like, look at me. But yeah, I would go to DUI court. They have court every Monday. You go, and my job was to go sit in the jury box, talk to the treatment team ahead of time, the judge, the defense attorney, the DA, the prosecutor, whoever, the therapist, meet with this group of people to decide what made sense for the people who were coming to court that day. So it's court mandated treatment, people who have, just severe 3 to 5 plus DUIs, right? Like who will never have their license back, and they're going through treatment, but they have to show up at court in order to stay in treatment and not go to jail. And so these people are coming in and telling these stories, and I'm like, oh no, I'm like, this is sounding familiar. And I
I
think,
did that last weekend.
Yeah. Hey, I know
yeah,
that guy.
yeah, like I drove drunk the other day, like, and I don't really remember. And I think the the crazy part of that is you ask, was there an aha moment? No, there
Mm,
was lying to myself, a lot of little moments where I just lied to myself, a lot of rationalizing that was happening. But yeah, there's definitely like a rape essentially that I didn't realize had happened. And
mm,
I, I remember feeling horrified and scared. I'll never forget that feeling. And it's incredible to me that I didn't put that together, that I really didn't trust myself that much, that something like this could happen. I could feel what it feels like to experience what that is, and then continue to tell myself that didn't happen. No, you're perceiving it wrong. That's not reality. And then move forward with my life. And so that was a big moment for me because I remember, I can feel it in my body now, the feeling that something like that gives you. That was a
mm,
traumatic part of that life
mm,
that definitely fueled my drinking and fueled my lack of self-worth. So
mm.
Did you find that things were normalized for you because you were a professional?
I think I felt like I was superior.
Mm.
Mm,
I think that's been my life's goal, to prove that I'm superior because I've been so inferior
Mhm.
in a lot of those life experiences. And this just amplified that. Like, oh, I'm getting hired for this job, and they wouldn't hire me if I were like you. So I must not be like you. But in reality, living this incredibly scary double life that
Mhm.
I remember driving to work and being like, if I got pulled over right now, I would be right next to this person in DUI court
Mm.
who I am supposed to be providing services to. And I'm going into, prior to court, I'm meeting with the team, the treatment team, and the judge and the attorneys to discuss treatment for someone and what penalties they should be receiving or not receiving based on if they turned in their AA slips to me. I was very, very terrified to have anybody find out about this like other life that I was living. It's too bad because I was studying for the LSAT, took the LSAT, was, hoping to apply and get into law school, and I abandoned that in part because the shame from that, double life I was living was too much. I was like, I can't do it. Like, and I really gave up on that goal and that dream to become a public defender for people like, me, who I am now, people with addiction problems who can't afford an attorney. And so that's ultimately I was like, oh, I can't, I'm not going to do the legal stuff. I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't want to do
Mm,
this. I'm going to give up on a dream for alcohol because I can't stop drinking and then to do this job, because I think it kind of got to that point where it was like, if I want to continue down this path and do this job well, then I have to drink less, or live
Mhm.
that life. And I couldn't do it. Oh man, I was blacking out every weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, probably, and pulling it together to go to work, pulling it together, hungover all the time. Excuse me. You know, running home, running home like 3 miles at 3 a.m. in cowboy boots in Portland, Oregon, wasted by myself, just stuff like that all the time. Something inside of me was just like, you need to stop. Like, you just need to stop drinking. Like, this is, you're going to die out there. Like, you're just going to die. And so I quit, and I said, I'm going to quit for, I think it was indefinitely, but I said at least 6 months or something like that. And I went to one AA meeting, and I was like, this is not for me. This is cute. Like, this is cute that it works for you guys. But I walked away, and I always say, like, I walked away from that meeting, and my alcoholism convinced me I was an alcoholic. For 6 months, I was done. I was convinced, like, oh, I don't have a problem because look, I can quit for 6 months. No problem. This willpower that I exercised was enough to tell me that I don't have a problem. Yeah. So I work at this like accounting firm. It's like a prestigious accounting firm. I work in marketing, and I have a great experience working there. I met my husband there. I like working here. It's a great culture. My family is happy that I'm doing pretty well. I think it was a time where I was like, okay, I'm checking the boxes. I'm doing what I should be doing. It was an abandonment of myself. It was an abandonment of my authenticity and a rejection of who I am deep down to make my family happy or try to win their approval, I think. So yeah, that was that chapter. I get engaged, I get married, but his family was, they're just big drinking family, and we would drink every day. I think we would work, and then we would drink at night and then get up and do it again. Like, really leaning into this lifestyle. Even though I wasn't doing the crazy stuff I was doing before, I was, staying home and drinking. He would go on a golf trip, and I would get drunk by myself and get blacked out, but it was, I wasn't going out and hooking up with random people. I wasn't even living in the city. I was very, pushing to get married, pushing for all these things to check the box. Like, let's get married, let's get a house, like all of these things. And really was like the instigator for the marriage and the instigator for the divorce. And I think, a lot of that comes out of me just, again, trying to do what I think is the right thing to do, or what people think I should be doing. Just even in hindsight, it's incredibly painful because I look at how I behaved and look at my actions that in turn caused so much pain for someone else. Man, I still hate myself for that. So after the divorce, I had moved back to Portland. I was like the brand director for an agency, and actually it happened to be my brother's agency. And so we worked together for like 4 years. And I was, I was living this cool life. I was single for, I think, the whole time. I was drinking a lot and hooking up with people and going out, but I kept it together a little bit better. And until I didn't. Over those 30 to 36 is just this downward decline of my life. And it wasn't fast. It wasn't, a quick overnight thing. It happened slowly. I started to become suicidal again, and I was just a wreck. And I was like, I just have to drink to feel okay.
It sounds like this was about the time where you consciously started drinking to feel different. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I would
And did
say
you
around this
realize that
time.
at the time? Like, did you realize that this is the shift? This is a moment? Things are different now?
I think yes. And I think what made me realize it was different is because I got a DUI. I didn't know what to do with myself when I couldn't drink because of this DUI. I had to go through this pretty rigorous, like 90-day period and jump through all these hoops and get a breathalyzer. And you can't, blow into the breathalyzer. If you fail once, then you're probably going to jail, So the stakes were high enough for me that I was like, I'm not drinking. So I didn't drink for the full 90 days. I was like, I'm not messing around. Like, and at that point, I remember being like, this sucks. I don't want to live like this. I have to be sober right now, and I cannot wait. Counting down the days. So at this point, I don't have my license. I can't drive, and I had started this new job. So after this happened, I was like, oh, I can work from home. Because I can't drive anyway. So I can work from home, and it's really easy to drink now. And I think at that point too, I was single, like truly single again. And so when that happens, it's all bets are off again. I'm doing whatever I want. And that's when I think it started to get a little bit more dangerous with who I was surrounding myself with. And so I was going out to bars, on dating apps, meeting whoever I could, lining up my next boyfriend, trying to have someone with me for the night. And it took alcohol for me to be able to do that. I remember bringing someone home from a bar and like when he was in the bathroom in my studio, I hid all of my valuables. I was like, I gotta hide all this stuff because I don't know this person. And the
Mhm.
next morning he left, and I was like, where are my valuables? I don't know where anything is. And I had forgotten that I hid them. This was the fateful time when I met a guy through a dating app who is still probably a drug dealer.
And how old are you
I,
at this point?
you know, I was 32. And it was interesting because so this drug dealer that I was kind of dating was doing everything. He's like, I'm not going to give you drugs. Like, we're not even going to go there. And I was like, that's fine. I don't care. And he would deal drugs out of my apartment. And then once I kind of got into through other, circles of friends, that's when I started to like dip my toe more and start buying from him. And that really convoluted our relationship. It's hard when I think back on this stuff because I still grieve that lifestyle. I still
Really?
grieve those. Oh, yeah. I grieve those relationships. That's been almost one of the hardest things in recovery in this last year.
Mm. How'd you end up homeless?
It was slow. It was a really slow thing I didn't see coming. I eventually quit this other job because I was failing. I was absolutely failing. I was high all the time. I was making so many excuses for myself. I'm like, this company, it's the company's fault. It's this manager's fault. In reality, I'm failing. And so I quit before I got fired and start living off of my 401k. Like I was the girl that always had drugs just because the drug dealer, we weren't like dating, but he had a girlfriend and he was cheating on her with me. It was just a mess. And then this drug dealer was like, do you want to like make some money since you're putting yourself at risk? And I was like, sure. And that's how I started getting into dealing drugs.
Can you connect some emotion to that time frame?
Oh, I can feel it right now. I
Hmm.
can feel it right now. The power, I'm valued for something, just looking to be valued all this time. I wish there were some sort of group for people who used to be dealers, as and not that I was this major dealer at all, but just getting a taste of what that's like is incredibly addictive. And
Hmm.
Mm.
it definitely gave me something that a rush, a thrill. I felt, just wanted all the time. Like
Hmm.
people needed me all the time. And
Hmm.
it was
Just
built
a
in
sense of
friends.
power, hey?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Mm. So when did that start to fall apart?
Yeah, so I had a falling out with this dealer. I get involved with this other dealer who does it like is moving. He's moving drugs like much more so than this other person. Like I feel like I fell head over heels for this guy, and it was probably the drugs. It's just like all convoluted. I'm speechless to this day that this all happened, and trying to get by. And this guy, this dealer's like, I can sell you an ounce or whatever for a lot cheaper, and then you can go turn it around and make this much money. And I was like, win, win, win. I can hang out with
Hmm.
you more. I get to do as many drugs as I want. I always have drugs on hand. I get to deal. What? Yeah, of course I'm going to do that. And so that's when I started to be like the dealer for this like specific group of people.
Hmm.
And I lost my apartment. I had lost my friends at that point because they had intervened and told my parents. So my parents knew that I was selling drugs. They knew I was doing drugs. I would
Hang on
not get
now. So
help.
your friends, the drug dealers and the drug traffickers, told your parents what you were doing.
No, my friend group from high school who I was still close with,
Oh.
so yeah, so they, and which I, sadly they had, bought drugs from me too. But
Mm.
then they started to be like, oh, this is like, they're like, she is really out of control and this is scary. And they're like, I think also they know me, they've known me since we were kids and what my personality is like. And they're like, she's not going to stop. Yep.
Okay, so now you're homeless. What does that look like? Like, do you remember the day that you like walked away from your apartment for the last time?
Yeah, well, I had a place like a crash a friend was like, you can stay in this room. Eventually he was like, you can't stay here anymore. When I had money, I'd stay at this hostel. And my friend let me sleep in his van a little bit too. So that's what it looked like. I was never like on the streets in a tent. I didn't realize that I didn't have a home. I didn't realize that. Not knowing where you're gonna go,
And
and
feeling
at
like it
least I had a
snuck up on
car.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like
Mhm.
how did we get here? And
How did I not
it's
see this coming?
indescribable.
And like, how do I
Yeah,
get out now?
how it snuck up on me is, the rationalizing like, well, I can't live in this apartment just because it's too expensive. No, you don't have money.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So what did the street look like then?
No, I never spent consecutive nights on the street. I think I spent some time in my car, and then I eventually just came to my parents' house and
Mm.
was selling drugs and doing drugs out of my parents' house.
Mm.
And then I think I eventually got enough money to find like a room that was with um, a dancer who I'd met through a drug friend. And so I moved some of my stuff there, had like a mattress on the floor, and and that's where I stayed for kind of intermittently between there, and I would come to my parents' house. My parents had my dog for like the 2 years, no, year probably after I kind of lost my apartment and was just couldn't. I mean, I'd leave my dog home for like days at a time, just animal neglect. And so he eventually came and stayed with my parents. And so I kind of toggle back and forth between this like room that I had with this person, um, and then back here. And yeah, that's kind of what my life looked like. I was
Mm.
selling drugs. I would have people come meet me like around their house if I couldn't get to Portland. My routine was kind of like stay sustain being awake as much as I can throughout the day and try to go to work and trying to work with customers, which doesn't make any sense. But then it became isolating to the point where I would come home and wake up and not know, what time it was. Like, is it in the middle of the night? Is it in the morning? I don't know.
What led you into recovery? Like what was the experiences that finally did it for you?
The day I decided to go to rehab was like I was riding my bike around town, this like fixed gear bike that was too tall for me, that it's like I can't believe I didn't crash. But I was like, I'm gonna go visit my parents and see my dog. And it's like 11 a.m. on like a Wednesday. And I was like, I'm not like wasted enough to deal with this. So I'm gonna stop somewhere and like get some drinks beforehand because I don't have anything at home. And I go to this like, I don't know, like a Mexican restaurant along the way. I like somehow make it there, get 4 shots, give the guy my card, and it's declined. Like I don't know why I was surprised, but that really shook me. I was like, I have nothing. I literally have nothing. What am I gonna do? Like I'm at a crossroads. I can either go be a sex worker and try to sell drugs. That's what I can do. Those are my options. Or I can go to rehab because I was like, there's no way that I'm asking for financial help from my parents and continuing to do what I'm doing. It's you ask, are they're like moments of clarity. I think it's more of like there are moments of horror,
Mhm.
like along the way. Living out of a hostel when I could. I was like living out of a really sketchy hostel when I could pay for it. And and I would wake up with like alcohol around me, drugs all around me, and like rotting food. And I would somehow get myself together, pack my bag up, and then drive to work. And that was my life. My poor parents were like, we I mean, I didn't know this until recently, but they had been taking like classes, or they were in a group. They were in like a support group together
Hmm.
before I even went to treatment. And so they had kind of plugged into a treatment center in the area and were like, trying to get me to go. And so they were kind of like, say the word, like just say the word. We're not going to force you. I was so ill. I and like I was probably 20 pounds skinnier than I am now. And I'm like, I don't even know what. So I was probably like 105, like
Mm-hmm.
bruised everywhere, trying to ride this bike, like, and just everywhere. I was just, clearly not doing, clearly just decaying, not able to ride this bike. I remember this distinct feeling of being like, I don't even care if I crash, but I don't know how I'm even alive right now. I don't know how I'm functioning because my body was just breaking down. And so I think, and even, when you drink, when you're an alcoholic, it doesn't do anything after a while. So I'm like, tell the guy, I'm like, I am so sorry. Like, this is just like gross, disgusting behavior. And I can't believe I'm the person like acting this way. And so I get to my parents' house and we go sit in like the backyard, and I'm like, I'm ready, like I'll go, whatever. I was like, I need help, I can't live this life anymore. I can't support myself. That was October 14th, 2023.
Okay, let's take a quick break. I'm going to read off today's sponsors. Y'all can have a drink of water. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, EHN Canada is Canada's leading provider of mental health and addiction services, providing evidence-based and medically assisted care with 1-year wraparound services for those suffering from substance use disorder. To learn more, find their link in the show notes below. Métis Nation Saskatchewan has announced its path for the pursuit of self-government. As an MNS citizen, I am proud to see my government fight to protect my rights. This is our moment. To learn more about the treaty and our path to self-government, go to ourmoment.ca. Wellness News, Choice for Healthy Living, is a local resource that works to connect people to health and wellness-related products, services, and expert advice from industry professionals, locally allowing us to connect and engage. Check out wellnessnews.ca or skwellnesshub.ca today to learn more. To make contact or to learn more about our sponsors, to check out our merch, or if you want to show us some love and buy us a coffee, all of those links are also in the show notes below. Okay, so tell us about rehab. Tell us about treatment. You walked in there. You didn't want to be there. Did you know this was the end, or did you still think that you just needed to learn how to manage your using?
I went in not fully accepting, what my life had become, but I went in knowing that I couldn't do it anymore, which is great. But yeah, I went in like, you know, pissed. I was like, I have a chip on my shoulder. I'm like, I know I have to be here. I don't want to be here, but this is the only option for me. I have a lot of deep problems that um, go far beyond alcohol and drugs.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I realized is it's not about alcohol and drugs almost. It's, there people were, drinking in rehab, like, which is ridiculous. And that kind of came to light. And I was like, you know, I stood up. I was like, that's not why we're here. And it's poisoning the rest of the group, and that kind of came back on me. And it was, people didn't like me for saying that and doing the right thing finally. And like, that was a huge moment of growth for me. I was like, I can do the right thing and not be liked for it. I can do the right thing, the unpopular thing, and I feel good about myself. Like, that was a huge growth moment for me because, prior to that, I would have just gone along with, something that morally was not aligned with my moral compass. You have these little light bulb moments, but then also just the experience of going through hard things when you're in that environment where it's a safe environment, where I really was proud of myself. It was partially the realization that I can make good choices, but also I'm doing it for myself. This is the first time I'm doing this for myself. I'm not trying to do the right thing so I can fit in with my family.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing the right thing because that's what I should do. I'm doing the right thing and making this decision, and a good decision, because I'm like, I believe in it. I believe in this. And kind of this, I think I wish I would have, come into my own a little bit 20 years ago, but that didn't happen. And it almost felt like this is a situation where at 16, 17, 18, 19, that you would face and you would like make the right decision. And it felt like just now I'm doing that. I mean, it's an uphill battle. Like, also just going to rehab, I realized how much work I had cut out for me, and how much catching up I had to do just personally, like my emotional growth. and just how stunted my emotional growth really was. I realized in rehab how detached, just how absolutely detached from myself and from my feelings I have been for so long.
You didn't want, like for me, like I went there and I didn't really want to be there, but about halfway through I realized that I built this little recovery bubble and I didn't want to leave treatment,
Yeah,
like cuz I was like,
yeah,
can you relate to that? What did that look like for you?
totally. Yeah. I felt like, oh no, I have to go into the world now.
Mm,
Like this recovery bubble is awesome. And it's like, but it's not real life. And while I felt so like strong and, had this community, I also knew in my, I don't know what it was, why I felt this way or had this like intuition, but I was like, these people are not fast. This is just, we're passing through. This is like a stop on the way to something else. And I think I was trying to like, you know, make the most of that time and just be present and be happy for it. Because for me, what was next was living in a sober house, not having a job, trying to rebuild relationships with my family, and stuff I didn't want to face, and having to go out in the world and not be locked up. And
mhm.
how am I going to make this work? How am I going to bridge the gap from success that I've created for myself in this community and rehab, and then go out into the world and be able to apply this stuff, because there's such a gap.
So what did that look like then for you when you left rehab?
So I had a sober house lined up that that was recommended to me that I move into, and like I said, I am such an all or nothing person, and I was like, I'm going to be the best at recovery. I was like, that's a
That sounds
compliment.
familiar.
I'm like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I was like, I'm going to win, obviously. And so, in treatment, that was that became my mentality to a degree, and so competitive. And so, I was like, okay, well, what does it take to win? I have to go do all the things you're saying. So 90 meetings in 90 days, go to live in a sober house, get a sponsor, keep going to treatment. I did intensive outpatient treatment, which was also recommended, IOP. So I did literally, I think, everything that was suggested of me, because what was I going to do? I didn't have
Hmm.
anywhere to go live. I didn't have a job. I didn't have money. There really was, I almost feel lucky that I didn't have those things, because it really did give me the space to dive into recovery. Sober living, I've talked about this in some of my videos, but it was like the hardest thing. It was the hardest thing, but it kept me sober. And so it was also the best thing. And I stayed there for 9 months. I was in that house for 9 months. And I wonder, I'm like, if I hadn't lived there, my recovery would look so different. I think it really, again, allowed me to like explore myself and recovery, and forced me to be accountable, and showed me how selfish I am. You're sharing a room with someone, you're sharing space with like 11 women,
Hmm.
and there's a house manager, and there's mandatory things you have to do. And it's not about me. It's not all about me. So yeah, that's kind of what it looked like. I was doing intensive outpatient treatment 3 days a week for 3 hours. I was seeing a therapist. I finally got in to see a psychiatrist who diagnosed me with bipolar 2 disorder, which was an interesting kind of, layer of complexity to have that diagnosis come into play.
So you went into the rooms. Did you get a sponsor and do the steps and do all of the things? Like what did that look like?
So I initially actually started doing NA online when I was in treatment,
Hmm.
because I referred to myself as an addict. I kind of had a soft sponsor who I met online in the rooms, the NA rooms online, who was in New York at the time,
Hmm.
who was a guy who, actually, I didn't realize that that's a big no-no to have a guy as a sponsor who's, been sober a long time.
Hmm.
So that was kind of my first blush. It was like, okay, this is what, a program looks like.
Hmm.
And I moved into the sober house, and I had done a little bit of AA. I was kind of on the fence. Should I do NA, AA? I didn't realize that they're, pretty different. And I remember that I'm incredibly ambitious, and I made a meeting schedule for myself. I was like, okay, 90 and 90, got it.
Let's
Like, I
go.
am gonna, like, time, date, like, what's the name of the meeting, like, like
Hmm.
everything. And so I had that all
What
mapped
do I want to
out for
share that
myself.
day? That's going to
Yeah,
save everyone's
totally.
lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What am I going to say is going to be so profound? Oh, totally.
Yeah. Yeah. And then be mad
Yeah.
at the chair if they don't ask you to share because you were going to, now that
So-
chair just killed people tonight because I didn't get to share.
yeah. Yeah, spot on.
Yeah.
Spot on. Yeah. Yeah. That's been a journey too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had meetings planned out for myself, and it was like it was the coolest, just chill women, East Side Portland, like, and I was like, these are my people. I was
Hmm.
like, hold on, this is actually, I want to come to this meeting. I want to hang out with these people. And that was a big reason I stayed in AA and in the rooms and kept coming back, because of that meeting and the culture of that meeting.
Hmm.
And that's where I met my sponsor. And that has been an absolute game changer. I had no idea how much of a game changer that was going to be for me. I was like, do you want to be my sponsor? I don't, what's your name? Like, I don't, it wasn't like this well thought out thing.
Yeah.
Our stories strangely align, we're similar, like beyond similar as people. And so that's just been an incredibly important relationship for me. And, bringing it back to the high school trauma, she's the coach I wish I would have had in high school. This is how you can have a relationship with someone who can coach you, and it doesn't have to be abusive. It can be really beautiful and helpful, and you can grow. And so that's been my experience in AA so far. I mean, I have a lot to say about AA.
Let's talk a
Yeah.
little bit. I mean, we can't talk about the program really without talking about spirituality or the lack of it. One of the two. You
Yeah.
either you go in as an atheist and you find the group as a higher power. Like that's just a part of the program that is sort of undeniable. You need to have something bigger than yourself that you can sort of have a relationship with. So what does that look like for you?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I had a hard time with that at the beginning because like I said, grew up very religious and kind of rejected that, especially after what happened in high school. I was like, this isn't real. This is, this
Hmm.
failed me. This really failed me. And at the same time, I was incredibly familiar with God and what I perceived as God because I had grown up with it. So it was kind of this interesting juxtaposition going into AA, really reluctant to be a part of it and to try to find my spirituality. Because of that, I think I inherently just developed this spirituality that is like absolutely the most important thing in my life at this point.
Hmm.
And it looks different for me than I think it probably does for other people. I'm sold, like I'm bought in, and not to religion, but to this connection with myself that I never knew I could have. And I don't have to go look for this other places. I don't have to go try to find validation and this sense of belonging that I've never felt like I had in things that are temporary and things that are fleeting. I don't have to do that anymore. And it's been a huge cornerstone of my recovery because it grounds me, and
Hmm.
it's that kind of north star, like moral compass for me. So I was always really reluctant to pray. I just think it's strange,
Hmm.
and it's like I'm like, what is this doing? I'm just so cynical. I'm like, this is this like a scientific thing, or I don't know. I just was cynical of it. But what goes prayers, I pray and then I meditate and then I journal,
Hmm.
and I do that pretty much every day. All it is to me is having a conversation with something bigger than me, and cultivating that relationship has taken time, and it's still so hard to remember, like, oh, I have someone that's on my team who cares about me and they're here all the time. Like, why don't I tap into that relationship more? And meditating has been a huge part of allowing me to remember to check in and stop and like slow down and pause and be like more mindful and understand, like, it's easy not to believe in something like that, especially with how the world is, especially with stuff everyone's been through. It's like, why is this happening? And so I want to be like the best version of myself. I don't want to be this other person over here that was treating everyone around me and myself just like crap. I don't want to be that person. I guess one thing I did early on is I set this like alarm in my phone. So it was like 3 or 4 times a day. It says, "Hey Anna, it's God." And so I would get an
That's awesome.
alarm because I was desperate. I
Yeah.
was like, I got to stay sober. Rehab happened. Here I am, and I'm driving to a meeting. What is it's like it's overwhelming. And I was like, I cannot lose my sobriety. I cannot. It's interesting too, because I feel like once I started to like practice that or give that a chance, things started falling into place. I was
Mm.
like, this is crazy. Like little things happening, meeting people. And it's beautiful. Like, I hate it when people say recovery is beautiful,
Yeah.
but everything was going wrong. Like, everything that could go wrong was going wrong before I went to treatment. The minute I went to treatment, everything was right. I just felt it in my bones. And everything that happened from that point on was hard, but it was so right.
Mm.
And that is a feeling that's like an unshakable feeling that I was not expecting.
Tell me about rebuilding your relationship with your parents.
I said this in a meeting the other day, or like my outpatient group. I was like, my parents are the parents people wish they had. When I came out of rehab, it was more so trying to be careful I wasn't still taking advantage of them.
Mm.
I think that was kind of where my head was at. One of the big moments that built back a lot of their trust was this. I haven't said this yet, but I was storing drugs to sell in their garage
Mm-hmm.
before I went to treatment. It was like $2,000. It wasn't anything crazy, but I had like re-upped my drugs, and then I decided to go to rehab, and I was like, okay, I have all these drugs, and I held on to them. I lined up someone to sell them to, and this is, I'm going to AA meetings. I'm like, I have a sponsor. I mean, I'm doing all the things like, and I'm still like, well, it's okay if I sell these drugs though. And I, I was meeting up with this guy, in a couple days, or I was planning on meeting up with this customer in a few days to sell the drugs to him. And I reached out to a friend from outpatient, and I was like, I need your opinion, kind of knowing what he would say. I was like, what do you think? He's like, I don't know, Anna. He's like, sell the drugs and let me know how you feel. I was like, I can't sell them. I can't. And so I literally flushed all the drugs, which is still painful for me to say, just the principle of that. And, like I talked about drug dealing. But what I did after I got rid of them was I sat my parents down and said, I need to tell you something. This concerns you. And I would feel better about you knowing, because you deserve to know. And that was a big breakthrough, I think, because I think they're like, oh, she's serious. The double life and the secrecy that I've been living for so long, I started to break that down a little bit. And, that was healing for me. And I think it makes me want to cry. Like, the relationship that I have with them now, it's been one of the greatest gifts of my life. If you asked what I learned in rehab, or, what I realized, and what I didn't say was, that is when I tangibly understood how to start loving myself.
Mm.
I had no idea how to do that before. And there was a moment in rehab where I remember exactly when that happened. And that's been a huge part of my recovery. And I like myself. I
Mm.
like myself now.
Mm.
And I don't know. I want to give that to other people. The whole reason I'm here and talking to you and trying to talk about my story is because I want people to have hope. So
Mm.
I guess that's all I would say. But
Awesome. Well, if you're still watching this far, don't forget there's a link to Anna's YouTube channel in the show notes below. Make sure you check her out. Give her a sub. Anna, thank you so much for joining me today at Donna and I. Yeah.
I feel
thank
like
you.
I've met a
Yeah.
soul sister.
Yeah, it definitely,
Yeah.
there's some spots that
Yeah,
really resonate
definitely.
with you.
Yes. This has been an absolute pleasure, Anna. Thank you so much for coming out today and sharing your story and your journey with us.
It's been an honor and a pleasure walking with you through your story. And I suppose that's it. We'll leave it there. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Say, this is Hard Knocks Talks.